still twitching ever so slightly. I had been on the lullaby case for the better part of 5 years, something I had to assume this mad woman to be fully aware of when she asked for me. The station at which we were currently located was not where we had originated, but one that served as more of a central hub for such investigations. Not only had everything we had learned about this killer led us to believe it was a man who had murdered 11 children and 6 families across the country, but this lady looked barely capable of picking out her groceries for the week, let alone evading the authorities for half a decade. In addition, Lullaby had been inactive for close to a year by this point, which led more credence to my assumption that this woman was off her rocker. I was honestly not too happy about being assigned this case at first, as I had spent the previous 4 years tracking who we dubbed the conscience killer, who had tortured and murdered around 50 people. Before that, there was a serial murderer we named Jasmine, as that was something of a calling card for that one. It only took us around 6 months to track him down, but Conscience and Lullaby were far more meticulous. While the Conscience case had gone cold a good 2 years before Lullaby came on the scene, the higher-ups, having assumed that they had either given up or even died, thought it was time to move on, thus putting my team on Lullaby. We had other cases, of course, one of which had us begrudgingly working on Christmas Eve, but that didn't compare to what the woman before me claimed to be. Is that right? I said with a heavy sigh, being quite sure this woman was just an attention-seeking crackpot. It's the truth, she insisted, slamming her palm to my desk. I replied, unfazed by her outburst. And what exactly inspired you to confess on this chilly Christmas Eve? Considering that I had been hoping to head home to my wife and my daughter soon, the last thing I wanted was to deal with some crazy lady looking for publicity. In addition to my inner frustration, we were no closer to catching Lullaby than Conscience. Hell, we would likely have a better chance at tracking down Jack the Ripper than either of these two, so I was certain that this elusive killer would not so casually stroll through my door, all neatly wrapped up for Christmas. It's the only way, she replied, slipping her hand from the desk. The only way that I can be safe. Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to elaborate quite a bit more, both on your confession as well as whatever it is that you're afraid of. He told me to stop, to never pick up my tools again, but... She trailed off, gazing down at her hands. It wasn't until then that I noticed the muddy red stains on her palms. When I looked at where she had slammed her hand to the desk, I could see the faint crimson streaked back from where she had pulled back. I still did not even slightly believe she was who she claimed to be, but I was growing more comfortable in the notion she did have reason to be here after all. Okay, I said, waving to Douglas, one of our new recruits. How about we get some sample of that? Anything you may have on your person and get you changed into some nice clean clothes, huh? Again, she did not resist, only nodded her head, getting to her feet and keeping her posture somewhat hunched. I couldn't tell if it was the weight of her action that left her looking so ashamed, that she was simply exhausted, or coming down from whatever was potentially coursing through her veins. It could be that she was keeping her head lower to hide her face, as she continued to cut her eyes in all directions while we led her to the next destination. Once forensic Chief, it's a whole other thing to be in a room with these freaking monster. I know what you're feeling. Just give me a minute, yeah? I asked, still breathing heavily. You got it? You want me to throw her in a cell? Not yet. Need to get through this. I gotta be sure it's done right. Just give me a minute. Okay, just yell if you need me, Leslie said, heading back through the door. By the time I managed to compose myself and headed back into the warmth of the office, Jenkins had received word from the Grady PD. Just as had been the case with all of the other children this awful woman had saved, the little girl apparently looked as though she was only sleeping with the music box still playing its jingle tune. Her parents, however, did not look quite so peaceful. While every kid Lullaby killed died from a fast-acting poison, one that they were not aware was being introduced into their system while they slept. Her methods of doing away with their folks varied from case to case. In several instances, she had allowed the mothers and fathers of her victim to live, but others would not be so lucky, if you can consider surviving such a thing to be considered living anyway. 3 couples were shot while they slept, likely having no idea anyone was even in their house. Ones had their throats cut during the night, while the other 3 sets of parents, 4 now, have been butchered. Though none of them likely had much of a chance to put up a fight, given that the fatal injury seems to happen first, she apparently was not content to have it at that, slicing and carving into their flesh as they bled out. From what Sheriff Harker out in Grady said, the master bedroom of the small house was quite the mess by the time she was through. I felt my guts attempt to bubble over again while Jenkins gave me the information, something I thought I had grown immune to after all these years. But after time, I managed to settle myself back down again. Want me to take it from here? Leslie asked, as I began to head back to the interrogation room. No, I got it. I appreciate it though, I just gotta see this one through, you know. I got you, Chief. Just don't let her get under your skin, okay? You feel like you need to get out of there? Yeah, Les, I got you. The woman had barely moved an inch since I'd been gone, as much as I could tell anyway. She still stared down at the table, not even glancing at me when I re-entered the room. We got the word back from Grady, I said, fighting back my need to clench my jaw as I spoke. Looks like you're telling the truth. She just nodded, maintaining her hunched over posture. So, let's make this quick, yeah? I said, sliding the sheet of paper and a pen across the table, laying out the recorder. You give me your full confession, and we'll get you into the cell you wanted. She didn't put up a fight, nor did she waste any time stating the facts. Not only did she speak into the microphone, barely hesitating in between every name she listed, but she wrote down the information as she spoke it. She recalled the name of every child she murdered, though the monikers assigned to any of the parents slipped her mind. Fortunately, I had the records of a crime with me, to be able to lend a hand with anything she neglected it. While she made this process much easier than any other criminal I had interviewed over my years on the job, I still winced with every detail, though I managed to keep myself composed enough to not act on any of the impulses I was feeling at the time. I could not stand being in the presence of this wretched creature. Regardless of my impatience stays at hotels a lot, but I always come back home. After Milwaukee, when I got there, he was there. He was inside my house. He was waiting for me. Her bodily spasm and shivering extremities worsened the more she spoke, almost inspiring me to mimic her. It could also be that the room felt like it had grown colder again, as if her story had some otherworldly effect on the furnace of the old building or the ventilation system. As soon as I saw him just sitting there in the darkness, I pulled out my gun, firing 3 shots at him without blinking an eye. He didn't even twitch, just dusted off his vest like I tossed a snowball at him. He still didn't speak, just held his hand out, gesturing to my sofa. I could tell, that he knew what I am. I didn't put up a fight, not after seeing that it wouldn't work. I could tell that he was who he was anyway. I wanted to cut in and ask who exactly she was talking about. Impatience and all that, but I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to see where this was going, even if I had a feeling it was heading to a place I wouldn't believe in the end. He told me that he was giving me one chance to stop. He didn't have to specify what he was referring to, nor how he knew about it in the first place. I never believed in him or any of the stuff really, but being face to face, even in the darkness, I could see it in his eyes. She whipped her head to one side, her lower lip trembling as she stared at the wall opposing the two-way mirror. I followed her gaze but saw nothing. I glanced around the room, finding nothing unexpected or unusual, but she appeared frozen in time for those seconds while she glared at the wall. "What?" "I'm sorry," she said, snapping her head back to face me, wiping tears away with the back of her arms. "It's nothing, just not much time left, not now." "Okay," I said, beginning to feel like this was some sort of performance I was witnessing, perhaps the groundwork for an insanity plea, but I still wanted to know where her story was going, even if I was starting to feel like a fool for indulging her in this. After that, I did stopped for a long time. She began again, barely missing a beat. It wasn't easy, not at first. Every time I saw a mother yelling at her child in a store, or a father looking as though he wanted to slap his kid, I wanted to release them from the pain of it all, what my parents put me through. I wished for it to end, for someone to sing me a lullaby just like I did for the ones I saved. "Alright," I said, growing more exhausted from this display I was certain to be a fabrication for the sake of her defense. "I think I've heard enough." "No, wait," she yelped as I got to my feet. "I'm almost done, I promise. I need to get this out." "Okay," I said with a heavy sigh, dropping back into my chair. "But don't expect me to believe you're insane." She glanced at the left of the room again, this time appearing far less afraid than the last. It was almost like she was seeking acceptance from the wall, like the brick and mortar were a jury she was confessing to. When the sound of